Verses 1 to 37. Here is, the Levites' petition presented to this general convention of the states, now sitting at Shiloh. They had not their lot assigned them till they made their claim. There is an inheritance provided for all the saints, that royal priesthood, but then they must petition for it. Ask, and it shall be given you. Joshua had quickened the rest of the tribes who were slack to put in their claims, but the Levites, it may be supposed, knew their duty and interest better than the rest, and were therefore forward in this matter, when it came to their turn, without being called upon. They built their claim upon a very good foundation, not their own merits nor services, but the divine precept, the Lord commanded by the hand of Moses to give us cities, commanded you to grant them, which implied a command to us to ask them. Note, the maintenance of ministers is not an arbitrary thing, left purely to the goodwill of the people, who may let them starve if they please. No, as the God of Israel commanded that the Levites should be well provided for, so has the Lord Jesus, the King of the Christian Church, ordained, and a perpetual ordinance it is that those who preach the gospel should live of the gospel, 1 Cor 9:14, and should live comfortably. They did not make their claim till all the rest of the tribes were provided for, and then they did it immediately. There was some reason for it. Every tribe must first know their own, else they would not know what they gave the Levites, and so it could not be such a reasonable service as it ought to be. But it is also an instance of their humility, modesty, and patience, and Levites should be examples of these and other virtues, that they were willing to be served last, and they fared never the worse for it. Let not God's ministers complain if at any time they find themselves postponed in men's thoughts and cares, but let them make sure of the favor of God and the honor that comes from Him, and then they may well enough afford to bear the slights and neglects of men. The Levites' petition granted immediately, without any dispute, the princes of Israel being perhaps ashamed that they needed to be called upon in this matter, and that the motion had not been made among themselves for the settling of the Levites. The children of Israel are said to give the cities for the Levites. God had appointed how many they should be in all, 48. It is probable that Joshua and the princes, upon consideration of the extent and value of the lot of each tribe as it was laid before them, had appointed how many cities should be taken out of each, and then the fathers of the several tribes themselves agreed which they should be, and therefore are said to give them, as an offering, to the Lord, so God had appointed. Number 35:8, every one shall give of his cities to the Levites. Here God tried their generosity, and it was found to praise and honor, for it appears by the following catalogue that the cities they gave to the Levites were generally some of the best and most considerable in each tribe. And it is probable that they had an eye to the situation of them, taking care they should be so dispersed as that no part of the country should be too far distant from a Levite's city. They gave them at the commandment of the Lord, that is, with an eye to the command and in obedience to it, which was it that sanctified the grant. They gave the number that God commanded, and it was well this matter was settled that the Levites might not ask more nor the Israelites offer less. They gave them also with their suburbs, or glebe lands, belonging to them, so many cubits by measure from the walls of the city, as God had commanded, number 35:4-5, and did not go about to cut them short. When the 48 cities were pitched upon, they were divided into 4 lots, as they lay next together, and then by lot were determined to the 4 several families of the tribe of Levi. When the Israelites had surrendered the cities into the hand of God, He would Himself have the distributing of them among His servants. The family of Aaron, who were the only priests, had for their share the 13 cities that were given by the tribes of Judah, Simeon, and Benjamin, v4. God in wisdom ordered it thus, that though Jerusalem itself was not one of their cities, it being as yet in the possession of the Jebusites, and those generous tribes would not mock the Levites, who had another warfare to mind, with a city that must be recovered by the sword before it could be enjoyed, yet the cities that fell to their lot were those which lay next to Jerusalem, because that was to be, in process of time, the holy city, where their business would chiefly lie. The Kohathite Levites, among whom were the posterity of Moses, though never distinguished from them, had the cities that lay in the lot of Dan, which lay next to Judah, and in that of Ephraim, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, which lay next to Benjamin. So those who descended from Aaron's father joined nearest to Aaron's sons. Gershon was the eldest son of Levi, and therefore, though the younger house of the Kohathites was preferred before his, yet his children had the precedency of the other family of Merari. v6. The Merarites, the youngest house, had their lot last, and it lay furthest off. v7. The rest of the sons of Jacob had a lot for every tribe only, but Levi, God's tribe, had a lot for each of its families, for there is a particular providence directing and attending the removals and settlements of ministers, and appointing where those shall fix who are to be the lights of the world. We have here a particular account of the cities which were given to the children of Levi out of the several tribes, not only to be occupied and inhabited by them, as tenants to the several tribes in which they lay. No, their interest in them was not dependent and precarious, but to be owned and possessed by them as lords and proprietors, and as having the same title to them that the rest of the tribes had to their cities or lands, as appears by the law which preserved the house in the Levites' cities from being alienated any longer than till the year of Jubilee. Yet it is probable that the Levites having only the cities and suburbs, while the land about pertained to the tribes in which they lay, those of that tribe, for the convenience of occupying that land, might commonly rent houses of the Levites, as they could spare them in their cities, and so live among them as their tenants. Several things may be observed in this account, besides what was observed in the law concerning it. Number 35. That the Levites were dispersed into all the tribes, and not suffered to live all together in any one part of the country. This would find them all with work, and employ them all for the good of others, for ministers, of all people, must neither be idle nor live to themselves or to one another only. Christ left his 12 disciples together in a body, but left orders that they should in due time disperse themselves, that they might preach the gospel to every creature. The mixing of the Levites thus with the other tribes would be an obligation upon them to walk circumspectly, and as became their sacred function, and to avoid everything that might disgrace it. Had they lived all together, they would have been tempted to wink at one another's faults, and to excuse one another when they did amiss, but by this means they were made to see the eyes of all Israel upon them, and therefore saw it their concern to walk so as that their ministry might in nothing be blamed nor their high character suffer by their ill carriage. That every tribe of Israel was adorned and enriched with its share of Levites' cities in proportion to its compass, even those that lay most remote. They were all God's people, and therefore they all had Levites among them, to show kindness to, as God appointed them, do. 12:19, 14:29. They were God's receivers, to whom the people might give their grateful acknowledgments of God's goodness, as the occasion and disposition were. To receive advice and instruction from, when they could not go up to the tabernacle, to consult those who attended there, they might go to a Levite's city, and be taught the good knowledge of the Lord. Thus God set up a candle in every room of his house, to give light to all his family, as those that attended the altar kept the charge of the Lord, to see that no divine appointment was neglected there, so those that were scattered in the country had their charge too, which was to see that no idolatrous superstitious usages were introduced at a distance and to watch for the souls of God's Israel. Thus did God graciously provide for the keeping up of religion among them, and that they might have the word nigh them. Yet, blessed be God, we, under the gospel, have it yet nigher, not only Levites in every county, but Levites in every parish, whose office it is still to teach the people knowledge, and to go before them in the things of God. That there were 13 cities, and those some of the best, appointed for the priests, the sons of Aaron. v19. Aaron left but 2 sons, Eleazar and Ithamar, yet his family was now so much increased, and it was foreseen that it would in process of time grow so numerous, as to replenish all these cities, though a considerable number must of necessity be resident wherever the ark and the altar were. We read in both testaments of such numbers of priests that we may suppose none of all the families of Israel that came out of Egypt increased afterwards so much as that of Aaron did, and the promise afterwards to the house of Aaron is, God shall increase you more and more, you and your children. P.S. He will raise up a seed to serve him.